Everything in life is a mind game. Whenever we get swept under by life's dramas, large and small, we are forgetting that no matter how bad the pain gets, no matter how harrowing the torture, all bad things end.
Powerful stuff, right?
Yeah.
That's David Goggins, straight from the pages of his book, Can't Hurt Me.
And it really sets the tone for the whole thing, doesn't it?
Totally.
Yeah.
Like a challenge right from the start.
Yeah.
From this point on, let's call him David, by the way.
Sounds good.
So David's life story, it's not just some self-help guru with feel-good advice.
Right.
The guy has lived through some incredibly tough stuff.
He has. And that honesty, it's what makes the book so powerful. He doesn't sugarcoat anything.
No, he doesn't. The poverty, the abuse, the racism.
It's all there. It makes you realize this guy, he gets it. He's been through the ringer.
His childhood especially, man.
Yeah.
It was rough. Forced to work at his dad's roller rink. Constant fear of violence, his mom being abused. It's hard to imagine how anyone could come out of that, without some serious scars.
It's that early trauma, though, that really shaped him. He learned to shut down his emotions, almost like a defense mechanism.
Yeah, you can see how it created this incredible resilience in him, this ability to withstand hardship that most people would crumble under.
It's like he builds up this inner armor, this mental toughness that became his superpower.
Exactly.
But even with all that, he still struggled in school.
He did.
Talks about cheating, relying on his athleticism more than his brains.
And that feeling of being an outsider, constantly being judged.
Yeah, especially as one of the few black students in predominantly white schools.
It definitely fueled his drive to prove himself, like he had to constantly defy expectations.
And then there's that story about Scott Guerin, the pararescue man who survived a near-fatal parachute accident.
Right. That was a turning point for David.
It's like a switch flipped.
It is, yeah. Like, he suddenly realized the human body, the human mind, they're capable of so much more than we think.
It sparked this desire in him to push his own limits, to see what he was truly made of.
And that led him to the Air Force, right? Hoping to become a pararescueman himself.
He did. But things didn't exactly go as planned.
Not at all. He struggled with his weight, hit some roadblocks, and ended up getting discharged.
It was a huge blow. Sent him into a bit of a tailspin.
You can see that tendency for self-sabotage in him, these incredible aspirations, but also these self-destructive patterns holding him back.
Like a constant battle between that drive to achieve and the fear of failing.
Exactly.
He ends up working as an exterminator, a far cry from rescuing people and all that.
Yeah, a pretty low point in his life for sure.
But then comes this moment. He's watching TV one night, and he sees this documentary about Navy SEAL training.
It's like that spark reignites.
Yep. And from that point on, it's all systems go.
It really is.
He's got this massive challenge ahead of him, losing, over 100 pounds in just 3 months to even qualify.
106 to be exact.
106 pounds in 3 months. I mean, most people wouldn't even attempt that.
But not David. He goes all in.
And he gets rejected by the recruiters at first, too.
Can you believe that?
Because of his weight. They tell him, come back when you're in better shape.
Unbelievable.
But he doesn't give up. Takes the ASFAB multiple times, studies like crazy, completely overhauls his life.
It's not just about the physical transformation, though. It's the mental shift that's truly remarkable.
The discipline, the focus. He basically has to rewire his entire mindset.
It's like he's forging himself anew, both physically and mentally, and that mental transformation is key to everything that follows.
Which brings us to BUDS.
Oh, yeah. Basic underwater demolition SEAL training.
Designed to break you. Plain and simple.
Mentally, physically, emotionally, they throw everything at you.
And then there's Hell Week.
5.5 days of pure torture.
Sleep deprivation, constant physical challenges, freezing cold water.
The instructors, they play mind games, try to get in your head.
It's all about weeding out anyone who's not 100% committed.
Yeah. Right. And it's in this crucible that we see one of David's key concepts emerge. Taking souls.
Taking souls.
Yeah. He's not just trying to survive. He's aiming to mentally dominate everyone around him. His fellow trainees, even the instructors.
He's trying to break them.
Mentally, yeah. It's pretty aggressive.
It's like he's weaponizing his own pain, his own suffering, to fuel his performance.
Exactly. But even with that approach, he doesn't sail through BUDS on his first try.
He doesn't.
Nope. Injuries, setbacks, he gets rolled back, meaning he has to repeat certain phases of the training.
He goes through Hell Week multiple times.
3 times, actually.
Wow.
It's a testament to his grit, his refusal to give up.
How does he even do it? How do you push through that level of pain and suffering? What keeps him going?
That's where the armored mind comes in.
The armored mind.
Yeah. This concept of mental toughness, of controlling your thoughts, not letting fear and doubt take over.
So it's like a muscle. You can train it to be stronger.
Exactly. And he gives you real-world examples, like pushing through those brutal physical challenges, embracing discomfort, constantly seeking ways to test his limits.
He even talks about running his first ultramarathon, the San Diego, one day.
100 miles.
100 miles with barely any training.
Yep. That's where he realized he was capable of so much more than he thought. And that realization became this driving force for him, this constant pushing of boundaries, both physical and mental.
And that leads us to two of his most famous principles.
The 40% rule and the cookie jar.
Right. The 40% rule being that most people quit when they've only given about 40% of their true effort.
And the cookie jar is this mental strategy where you recall past successes, those moments where you overcame adversity and use them to fuel your current performance.
So you're basically building up this mental arsenal of resilience.
Exactly.
I like that. But these principles, they're not just about physical challenges, are they?
No, David applies them to all aspects of his life. Career, relationships, personal growth.
It's this overall philosophy of constantly seeking discomfort, pushing past those perceived limits, and never settling for mediocrity.
He doesn't want us to just exist. He wants us to thrive, to become the best versions of ourselves. And he doesn't just talk about it, he lives it.
Like with the Badwater 135?
Oh, yeah. One of the toughest ultramarathons in the world.
135 miles through Death Valley in the middle of summer. That sounds insane.
It is. But for David, it wasn't just about the physical challenge. He was running to honor fallen SEAL teammates, to raise money for the Special Operations Warrior Foundation, which supports the families of those who've been killed in action.
Wow. It was about something bigger than himself.
Exactly. It was this incredible act of service, channeling his pain into something meaningful. And his training for it was just as intense as the race itself.
Heat training, rucking for miles, intentionally depriving himself of sleep.
He was preparing for war.
It seems like he thrives in these extreme situations. The tougher it gets, the stronger he becomes.
Absolutely. And it all comes back to mindset.
Mindset.
David believes that mental toughness isn't just for elite athletes or soldiers. It's something we can all cultivate.
So we should be constantly seeking out new challenges, stepping outside our comfort zones, pushing ourselves to see what we're truly capable of.
That's the idea. He doesn't want us to settle for a comfortable existence. He wants us to live a life that's full of meaning, purpose, and growth.
It's inspiring, but it also makes you wonder, what are we truly capable of if we push past those self-imposed limitations? What are we telling ourselves we can't do that we actually could achieve if we had the right mindset?
That's a powerful question, and it's one David wants us to ask ourselves constantly, because he believes our potential is far greater than we realize.
But it's not always a smooth ride, is it?
Yeah.
David faced some major setbacks along the way, physical and mental.
He did. A heart condition, a debilitating mystery illness, all sorts of challenges that would have broken most people.
It would have been easy to give up, to let those obstacles define him. But he didn't. What was it about his mindset that allowed him to keep going, to overcome those challenges and come back even stronger?
That's the thing about David. He shows us what's possible when you break through those mental barriers.
If you can overcome those physical challenges, what's stopping the rest of us?
Exactly. His story is all about that. You know, the power to adapt, to find a way even when it seems impossible.
He had to change everything. His training,
Yeah.
how he approached pushing himself.
Right. The old ways weren't working anymore.
That must have been so frustrating, like having to relearn everything.
It was. But in a way, maybe those obstacles, they forced him to dig even deeper.
You think?
Yeah, like he discovered a whole new level of resilience because he had to.
A good point. Life's going to throw those curveballs no matter what. It's not about avoiding them, but how we deal with them.
Exactly. And David, he doesn't just accept his limitations. He's always looking for ways to challenge himself, to grow.
Like with that whole world pull-up record attempt.
Oh, man. That was a wild ride.
He sets up this huge event, televised on NBC, aiming to crush the record.
And he comes up short.
In front of millions of people. I can't even imagine that pressure.
Most people would have crumbled.
Crawl into a hole and never come out.
But not David. He owns the failure,
He does.
analyzes what went wrong, and starts planning his next attempt.
No excuses?
None. Just pure determination to come back stronger. He sets up in this tiny CrossFit gym, miles away from the spotlight.
It gets back to work.
Exactly. It's like he's saying, I don't need the cameras, the hype. I'm doing this for me.
It's that inner strength, right?
Yeah.
That refusal to be defined by one setback.
It is.
But he must have been battling those doubts, that voice in his head saying, you failed.
Oh, absolutely. He talks about having to confront his ego, you know?
Yeah.
That part of him that was hurt by that very public failure. He had to admit he wasn't invincible.
And start again with humility.
Exactly.
It wasn't just about the physical training anymore. He had to rebuild his belief in himself.
Yeah. Which, after something like that, must have been incredibly tough.
So did he break the record the second time?
He didn't.
Yo, didn't.
Nope. But even though he fell short again, it was still a victory in a way.
How so?
He proved he could come back from failure. That he could push past that self-doubt and find another level.
It's a powerful message, isn't it?
It is.
That failure isn't the end.
It's a stepping stone.
And David, he embodies that in everything he does. Doesn't shy away from those failures. He uses them.
Right.
To fuel his growth. And it's not just with physical stuff.
No.
It's personal growth, his relationships.
He even talks about how his leadership style, it wasn't always the best. Too intense, too demanding. He realized he needed to develop more empathy.
It's great to see that self-awareness.
It is. Especially in someone who's achieved so much. He's not afraid to admit he's still a work in progress.
That makes his story so relatable, you know?
It does, because he's not this superhuman who never messes up. He's just a guy who struggles, who falls down, but always gets back up.
And that brings us to one of the biggest takeaways from the book. That question, what if?
Yeah.
David wants us to challenge ourselves, to explore our potential, to not be afraid to ask, what if I can do more than I think?
It's a call to action, to break free from those limitations we put on ourselves.
To embrace the unknown. It's about shifting our perspective from limitation to possibility.
Exactly. It's not just about some big achievement. It's about the change that happens inside us when we push ourselves.
It's about finding that strength, that resilience that we all have but maybe don't use.
And realizing we can do so much more than we give ourselves credit for.
It's about becoming the best versions of ourselves.
Not for anyone else, but for us.
And that journey, even if it's messy, even if there are setbacks, it's worth it.
It is. It's about embracing the whole thing, the good and the bad.
The victories, the failures.
And using it all to move us forward.
It's not about being perfect.
It's about growing.
Learning.
Evolving.
And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. So, where do we go from here? What can our listeners actually take away from all this?
It's about potential, isn't it?
Potential.
Yeah, that we all have this well of strength inside us, but we don't always see it.
Like we're holding ourselves back.
Exactly. David's story, it's like a wake-up call.
To show us we can do more.
Way more. But we got to start by recognizing those limits we put on ourselves.
Acknowledging that we're capable of much more than we think.
And it's not about becoming some perfect version of ourselves. It's about knowing we'll mess up, we'll have setbacks, but that's okay.
It's about how we react to those challenges.
That's what defines us. David shows us that.
It's about the journey, not just the destination.
Right. Embracing the ups and downs, using it all to grow.
Pushing past that 40%.
Tapping into our own cookie jar. Never giving up on becoming better.
It's a message anyone can connect with, I think.
Absolutely.
So if you're ready to push yourself to explore what you're truly capable of, check out Can't Hurt Me.
It's a tough read, but so worth it.
Links in the description.
As you're reading, think about your own cookie jar. What have you overcome? What are your strengths?
What's that one thing you've always wanted to do but been too afraid to try?
What if you can do it?
That's it for our deep dive into Can't Hurt Me.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
And don't forget to like and subscribe to By the Pages. We'll be back next week with another incredible book. See you then.